Last time we introduced the concept of meiosis. Why does meiosis happen and what actually is meiosis? But we didn't start with the process, and today we are going to explain the process and step by step of how a cell divides itself. Just to give you a quick reminder or a recap, we said that last time meiosis simply means that we are having a somatic cell or a body cell that is dividing, and then when it divides it forms a gamete. So basically meiosis, its purpose, it is to produce haploid gametes from body cells, and we say that the body cells, they are diploid, just referring to them that they've got 46 chromosomes. In a human being, the body cells have got 46 chromosomes, and then the gametes that are produced must have 23 chromosomes in them. Yeah. So we say that also meiosis takes place in two divisions. Okay, so we start with one cell, and that cell is a diploid somatic cell. It's a cell of your body, or it's a cell found in your body consisting of 46 chromosomes in a human being. Okay, it's not always the same for other animals, but for human beings, our body cells contain 46 chromosomes, and we say that it divides for the first time, meaning that it will split. Okay, so when it splits, it will split into two genetically different cells, and each of these cells would have 23 chromosomes in them, because we started out with 46 chromosomes in the diploid somatic cell. When it splits into two, one cell would have 23 chromosomes in it, another cell would also have 23 chromosomes in it as well. These two cells that are produced here, we don't say that they are gametes just as yet. They have to divide again for the second time. So after the first division, or after the first meiotic division, these two cells, each of them must divide to also form another two cells again using the same process. That is why at the end we result with 4 cells in total, and these 4 cells, we refer to them as gametes. Those are the sex cells. In males, the gametes are sperm cells, and then in females, the gametes are ovum, which is the egg cells. Okay, so basically we have got two meiotic divisions. Simply means that a cell, for a diploid somatic cell to form a gamete, it has to divide 2 times before it can form a what? Before it can form the gamete. And now when we went back to our houses, okay, when we finished the session, we said that each of these haploid gametes, these 4 haploid gametes, each and every one of them will contain 23 chromosomes in them. And Sam was like, no, the math is not mathing here. So today's session, we are going to be answering how we end up having 4 haploid gametes with 23 chromosomes in them. Okay, so we gave a brief idea that before meiosis begins, we have got an initial phase known as the interphase. So the interphase is the first phase of meiosis. Then during this interphase, basically what happens, the DNA replication process takes place. Remember guys, that DNA replication simply means that DNA, it is making an exact copy of itself. And we said that the chromatin network, it is made up of DNA and proteins. I think I still remember mentioning that for us to have a chromatin network, it is made up of DNA as well as proteins. So we must have a lot of DNA in the cell. That is why DNA replication must take place. I still remember at some point when we did the topic of DNA replication, we said that the purpose of DNA replication, it is to produce more DNA molecules so that they can be shared during cell division. So basically for a cell to divide through meiosis, what first happens? DNA replication is the initial process that takes place during the interphase. So the interphase, it is that phase in which DNA replication takes place. Now during the interphase, all we can see is just chromatin network. Most of the times in your exams, they won't question you the interphase because there's nothing much about it, right? So in the nucleus, we are going to see thread-like structures, and these thread-like structures are known as the chromatin network. And this chromatin network, guys, remember that it is made up of what? it is made up of DNA molecule plus a protein. So it is a DNA molecule plus a protein. But later on, this chromatin network, it will end up forming chromosomes. I think when I introduced last time, I told you guys that a chromosome comes from chromatin network. Okay, another feature that I want us to look at here, we have got another part here that we say it is known as the centrosome. So the centrosome, it is just another part. We'll see its significance later on. We're gonna see why it is important. All right, so the centrosome, in it we have got two centrioles. So inside this structure known as a centrosome, we have got two centrioles. Okay, we've got two centrioles. So you guys might not really need to know much about the centrosome, but later on we'll try to explore with him what's important about this centrosome. But inside it, we have got these structures that are known as centrioles, and you guys will see what are these centrioles and why are they significant to the process of meiosis. So let us go to prophase 1. Okay, so now we are doing the first meiotic division, meaning that we are having one cell, the diploid cell, that is dividing into two cells. So we say that is known as the first meiotic division, meaning that your cell, it is dividing for the first time. Okay, your diploid somatic cell, it is dividing for the first time. That is why when we write this phase, we say this is prophase, and we write a 1 next to it. Okay, so you can write the 1, or you can use the Roman numerals and say this is prophase 1. Okay, prophase 1, it is the first phase of meiosis. The interphase, we don't really consider it part of the meiosis division. It's just the process that happens before it begins. Okay, but once we say prophase 1, we are now starting to divide the cell. Now let's see what events take place during prophase 1, or actually what happens during prophase 1, so that the cell can end up dividing into two genetically different cells. The first thing, we now have visible chromosomes that are forming from chromatin network. I already told you guys that the chromatin network, those thread-like structures that we were able to find during interphase, these thread-like structures known as the chromatin network, later on they will condense and they will form chromosomes. So basically these thread-like structures that look like threads, and that looks like this is threads, right? They will do what? They will condense and they will form a chromosome. And remember the structure of a chromosome from our last session, we say it looks something like this. So during prophase 1, what happens? The chromatin network, the thread-like structures known as the chromatin network, it actually changes and it becomes a what? A chromosome. So once you see visible chromosomes in the nucleus of a cell, now you can say that you are in prophase 1. Let us try to identify that from this diagram that we're given, guys. Can you see, guys, that this cell here, it is having a nucleus? You can see this is your nuclear membrane with some nuclear pores, and you can see, guys, that here we have got chromosomes in the nucleus. How many chromosomes can you see from this cell? How many chromosomes can you see from this cell? Yes, so we have, yes, they are 4. So we are having 4 chromosomes in the cell. So I'm just going to write here next and say this is gonna be 4 chromosomes in the cell. Where's my pen? Okay, this is gonna be 4 chromosomes. So this 4 chromosome is the diploid number of the cells. So guys, this is not a cell of a human being. Okay, this is not a cell of a human being. Give a reason for that. Why would you say, guys, this is not a cell of a human being? Or what actually do you know about a cell of a human being? A body cell of a human being specifically?
There are 46.
Yes, it must have 46 chromosomes in it. So in this particular case, the diagram that I've provided for you here is a cell that is consisting of 4 chromosomes in its nucleus. So it can never be the cell of a human being. It ought to be another animal or another organism, right? But this is having 4 chromosomes. So we can dispute and say that, nah, this is definitely not a human cell because we are having 4 chromosomes in the cell. Guys, meiosis does not only happen in human beings, it also happens in other living organisms such as animals, because they also produce those gametes just like us as humans. So don't be surprised if we are using cells of other things, okay? So this cell is not a cell of a human being, because by virtue, we know that the cell of a human being, the body cell or the somatic cell of a human being, has got a diploid number of chromosomes, which is 46 chromosomes in total. But for this particular cell given, we are having 4 chromosomes in the nucleus of the cell. So we can say that here, this diploid number, which is 4, is not corresponding to that one of human beings. So the other thing that happens during prophase 1, the nuclear membrane and the nucleolus will start to disappear. So this is most important. So basically the nucleolus, remember, it is found within the nucleus. Remember guys, the nucleus looks like something like this, and then there's a nucleolus in it. Then yeah, so basically the nuclear membrane, this outer covering of the nucleus known as the nuclear membrane, will start to disappear. How can you identify this from this diagram? You can see that from this diagram, our nuclear membrane has been drawn in dotted lines. So these dotted lines are trying to tell you that this nuclear membrane is disappearing. These are dotted lines and they've got huge spaces between them. So these dotted lines tell us that our nuclear membrane, it is disappearing. Same applies to the nucleolus. You guys cannot see the nucleolus from this diagram, can you? From this diagram provided, can you guys see the nucleolus?
No, sir.
Guys, do you see any ball-like structure inside the nucleus for this one? Let me zoom in so that you can see properly. Do you see any ball-like structure inside the nucleus?
No.
No, it is because it is disappearing, guys. We can only see chromosomes inside this nucleus, okay? So the nuclear membrane and the nucleolus start to disappear. They start fading away, okay? They start to disappear, or we can say that they start fading away. So that is one of the events that take place during prophase 1, or this is one of the ways that we can identify that this is prophase 1 taking place. All right, and then the other thing, the centrosome splits into 2 centrioles. Now let me go back to when I introduced the centrosome. According to the introduction that I gave you guys, I just said a centrosome is just a part that has got 2 centrioles. So what we are most interested in as grade 12 learners doing life sciences, it is the centrioles. So you guys should just talk about the centrioles. The centrosome, you are not required to label it most of the times, but there are these structures that are known as what? As centrioles, and we need to be able to identify those structures from the provided diagram. So do you guys see these structures that look like T's, that look like T? These diagrams, these structures, do you guys see them?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so these are known as the centrioles. So these are known as the centrioles of the cell. And you guys know that the centrioles are coming from the centrosome. So they were kind of binded together. Okay, they were kind of binded together. All right, they were kind of binded together, and they were called a centrosome when they were binded together. But now during prophase 1, they split. That's why we say that the centrosome splits into 2 centrioles, and these centrioles will start moving away from each other because one is on this side now, another one is on the opposite side, so they are moving away from each other. Okay, but now there's something that we realize between these 2 centrioles. we have got thread-like structures as well, and these are known as spindle fibers. If you take note carefully here, if we look carefully at this point, between these two centrioles, these structures that look like T's, okay, that have got a T shape, we have got this thread-like structure that are represented using dotted lines. I'm sure you guys can all see them here. We've got these thread-like structures that are represented using dotted lines. These are known as spindle fibers. Okay, don't confuse them to chromatin network, guys, because chromatin network, it is found inside the nucleus of a cell, but the spindle fibers, they actually form between the two centrioles that have splitted. Actually, we say that here, these two centrioles, they have splitted. Like it was a centrosome before. During interphase, we called it a centrosome. Then it splitted into two centrioles, the one on top, the one that I'm highlighting here, the one on top, and the one at the bottom. So between these two centrioles, we've got thread-like structures that form, and these thread-like structures, they're known as the spindle fibers, or you can say it's a spindle network. But basically we use the term spindle fibers. So one of the evidences that you can give to say that this is indeed the prophase, you can add here and say that spindle fibers are forming. Okay, I'll just add it below the centrosome point. Let's just see. Okay, so you can add and say that here spindle fibers are forming. Spindle fibers begin to form. So when spindle fibers form, we say that we can give that as an evidence that this is definitely prophase 1. I'm sure you guys can all see the thread-like structures, which are these ones between the centrioles. Can you guys all see them?
Yes.
Yes. So the spindle fibers begin to form between these two centrioles. And then now we need to learn of another process that takes place during prophase 1 of the first meiotic division. We have got a process that is known as crossing over. So the main process that takes place during prophase 1 is known as crossing over. But for you to understand the term crossing over, you must understand what homologous chromosomes are. Remember, guys, I want to hear from you actually. What are homologous chromosomes according to what we discussed previously? What are homologous chromosomes, guys? Quick.
Chromosomes having same size, same shape, 2 chromosomes.
Yeah, so we're having 2 chromosomes that are having the same size, they're having the same shape, and most importantly, they code for similar characteristics. I even showed you guys the diagram showing the chromosomes in a somatic cell of a human being, known as a karyotype. I showed you guys that, for example, if we look at pair number 5 here on the karyotype, or when we look at this pair of chromosomes, they've got the same shape. These two, they've got the same shape, they've got the same size, they look alike, and most importantly, they code for the same characteristics or for similar characteristics. And we explained last time, where do you get those chromosomes from as a human being? You get them from your mother and from your father. So one of these homologous chromosomes is from your father, another one is from your mother. And these chromosomes, they are responsible for bringing you your physical features, such as your skin color, such as your hair color, such as your eye color. So please, guys, make sure that you understood what we discussed last time, so that you can be able to cope with what we have today. So basically, here we are having homologous chromosomes. I'm sure these colors are very visible to you, but I will zoom in even more so that you guys can have a better view of these chromosomes. Can you see properly, guys, the colors that have been assigned to these chromosomes? Can you guys all see them?
Yes.
All right, so the colors that we have for these chromosomes, you guys can see we have got a green one. If you guys can see properly there, think we have got a green chromosome there. We have got the one that looks green and it is small. This one, it looks green and it is small. Don't know if people can see it, but this one, this small green chromosome. Then we have got another one that looks a bit purple. Do you guys see the one that looks a bit purple? This big one, the following one.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this big one, it is the one that looks like a purple, like the color that has been assigned for this diagram is a purple chromosome. What about the third one? Can you see, guys, that it is pink?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and then the last one, it doesn't have any color. It is just given a white symbol. So I would like you guys to give me the homologous pairs of chromosomes here. Give me chromosomes that are homologous from these four.
Green and white.
Yes, the green chromosome and the white chromosome. Can you guys not see that these two are homologous because they have the same shape? They look alike. Guys, you need to not cram the definitions at this point. When I'm telling you of homologous chromosomes, I want you to be able to see them. I want you to identify this green chromosome and this one that looks a bit white. They are having the same shape. They look alike in terms of the shape. Also, the size is similar. Okay, and we also assume that they will code for the same characteristics. All right, so one of the chromosome is maternal, it is coming from the mother, and the other one is paternal, it is coming from the father, but they are homologous. They are homologous because they look alike, like they've got the same shape, same size. If you guys can look at them properly, the green one and the white one. Which other two pairs of homologous, which other pair of homologous chromosomes have we got here?
Pink and purple.
Yes, the pink one and the purple one. You can see that the purple and the pink chromosomes, they've got a similar shape, they've got a similar size as well. And we assume that they also code for similar characteristics as well, because these look alike, guys. So one is from the mother, one is from the father. So the process that happens to these chromosomes during the prophase 1, it is known as crossing over. So now we just need a better description of crossing over as to exactly what happens during crossing over. So usually this is questioned for 3 marks, and this is the best way of answering the question. Okay, so basically we start with before crossing over, we have got 2 homologous chromosomes. So I'm just going to zoom in one more time. Okay, before we get to how we answer it, let's just try to understand the process of crossing over from this diagram that I've been able to obtain somewhere. Okay, so you can see, guys, that before these homologous chromosomes cross over, they lie next to each other. Can you guys all see that? They're lying next to each other, the homologous chromosomes. These ones, they look the same. They've got the same shape, they've got the same size, and we assume they code for the similar characteristics. Do you guys notice that these are lying next to each other? The homologous chromosomes are lying next to each other. Do you guys notice that?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So we actually call that a bivalent. We call that a bivalent. So basically, what is a bivalent? A bivalent, it is just 2 homologous chromosomes that are lying next to each other. Okay, so we just call them, when we say bivalent, we kind of collectively calling them one thing known as a bivalent. But basically, it simply means that we're having 2 homologous chromosomes that are lying next to each other just before crossing over. So if they give you a biological term in the exam and they say, give the biological term for the following statement, and they say that, what is the term used to describe 2 homologous chromosomes that are lying next to each other before crossing over? You must have all of those terms. If you want to write the definition of bivalent right now, you're going to say that a bivalent refers to two homologous chromosomes, or you can say it refers to a pair of homologous chromosomes that are lying next to each other before crossing over. So this is before crossing over has taken place, which is the process that we're about to discuss. So we call them a bivalent. So do you guys understand what a bivalent is?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so after having this bivalent of ours, now the process of crossing over begins. So we move to stage 2, which is during crossing over. So now we are crossing over these chromosomes. Okay, do you notice, guys, that these chromosomes are actually overlapping with each other, or they are just they're overlapping with each other? That's the best word that I can use. You guys can see from the diagram that these chromosomes, okay, these two chromatids, if we notice carefully, we have got this chromatid here, this chromatid here, this one. Can you guys all see it? This chromatid from the red chromosome, this one. And then we are also having this blue chromatid, this blue chromatid, this blue chromatid, this one from the blue chromosome. And you can see that at some point they are overlapping. They are overlapping, or you can see that they are actually doing something there. I don't know how best can you describe that, but the proper term that we use, we say that these two chromatids, okay, they are actually doing what? They're actually overlapping. So this overlapping, it happens at a place known as the chiasma, or you can say it is the chiasma, depending on where you are from. Depending on where you are from, probably in KZN you're gonna say chiasma, but if you are in Gauteng, probably it's chiasma. Okay, so I don't know, what do your teachers call these guys, this place where the chromatids overlap?
Chiasma.
Oh, nice. I knew it. Definitely what you guys are going to definitely contrast with each other. It depends on where you are from, of course. So basically, guys, here, this point, so this point where the homologous chromosome, this point where the homologous chromosomes, or where these chromatids are overlapping, it is known as the chiasma. So this place or this location is known as the chiasma. And then after crossing over, okay, so now you ask yourself, Uti, why are these chromatids even overlapping, or why are they even like touching each other? You can see that they're in contact, these homologous chromosomes, or okay, these chromatids, specifically the chromatids, they are like touching each other, they're in contact with each other. What in the world are they doing, these people? This seems nasty, but like what in the world are these chromatids doing? Now, you can only answer that when you look at the final stage, or after crossing over. So when you go to after crossing over, you can see that here we have got after crossing over. So when you get to after crossing over, guys, what can you notice? What do you notice after crossing over? What's happening?
Yes, changing colors.
Yes, Oseho.
Genetic variation is taking place.
Hey, I cannot hear you properly. Speak closer to your mic.
Genetic variation is taking place. Exchange of genes, genetic information.
Yes, there's an exchange of genetic material then. Okay, but to explain that, you can see, guys, that in the diagram, this chromatid, at first it was red. This chromatid, guys, it was red. It was a red chromatid. This one, this first one that I'm pointing with this arrow. Let me just use an arrow so that you guys can see properly then. Okay, so this was a red chromatid. It was a red chromatid at first. It was completely red, guys. If you see it from top to bottom, it was completely red. From top to bottom, it was completely red. And this other one, it was completely blue before crossing over. From top to bottom, it was completely blue before crossing over. But after they overlapped here at the chiasma, or at this point known as the chiasma, after this overlap, what happens? Now, this chromatid that was red, it now has got a bit of a blue color there. So it now has got a bit of a blue color. Now you ask yourself, where is this blue color coming from? It is obviously coming from the blue chromatid because they've exchanged something. And when you look at the chromatid that was blue at first, this one, it was blue at first. Before crossing over took place, it was blue at first. But now, after crossing over, or after this overlapping, okay, this part that has been overlapping, or this part that is touched with the red chromatid, it now changes, guys, to become red. Do you see, guys, that this is no longer just only blue chromatid? It has got now a bit of red here, downwards here. Okay, so basically there's been an exchange here. And what are we exchanging here? We're exchanging genetic material. So this is the diagrammatic way of understanding crossing over. You guys must know how to make these diagrams and use colors to represent crossing over, okay? Because we are now going to explain it with exactly what does it mean in a realistic sense or in this biological sense. But you guys must get used to making these diagrams, okay? Know how to make such diagrams. So the diagrams, you must show before crossing over that your chromosomes, they are just forming a bivalent, they are just lying next to each other. During crossing over, you must show that they are touching each other. So these chromatids, these two adjacent chromatids are touching each other, and at this point we say it is known as the chiasma, or you can say chiasma, depending on wherever you come from. And then after crossing over, we observe that these chromatids that have touched each other, now they've got different colors now because they've exchanged their genetic material. Now let us see, okay, yes, Sam?
So say really important ukuthi kwenze crossing over on meiosis.
Okay, yeah, now let's go to why we must actually have this crossing over process, because now you guys now know how to make diagrams, because diagrams are not a big deal, of course. Let me just erase this. Okay, so diagrams are not a big deal. You guys can see what's happening with the diagrams. Now I want us to look at the real crossing over in terms of understanding what is crossing over in a realistic sense. These are just diagrams for you guys to have a bit of an idea or to illustrate. Okay, these are just analogies. But now, when we explain the process of crossing over, we say that the adjacent chromatids on homologous chromosomes, they overlap at the chiasma to exchange genetic material. This is 3 marks alone. Okay, this results in genetic variation. This is where you get answered, Sam. That's where we have to analyze what does this mean, because you guys understand the first 3 points of this process, because I've already illustrated. We are having two adjacent chromatids, and then they overlap, they touch each other, or they're in contact with one another for a particular time, and then after that they've got something that they've exchanged, because now they look different, the chromosomes, the chromatids, but specifically. So you guys understand the first 3 points. The adjacent chromatids that are found on homologous chromosomes, they overlap at the chiasma to exchange genetic material. Okay, now guys, let's bring a bit of a realistic sense so that Sam can be answered for this one. So Sam, remember that the one of this homologous chromosome, it is coming from your mother. One of them, it is coming from your father, right? You still remember that, Sam, do you?
Yes.
So one, it is a maternal chromosome, it is coming from your mother. Another one, it is your paternal chromosome, it is coming from your father. Assume that these diagrams are drawn to scale and these look alike exactly. So this is your maternal chromosome from your mother, this is your paternal chromosome from your father. So when they overlap, guys, we need to remember chromosomes, what do they do actually? Chromosomes, they are responsible for coding for the characteristics of your body, okay? physical characteristics of your body, specifically the autosomes. According to what we discussed last time, we say that they code for a particular characteristics of your body, such as your eye color, your skin color, or whatever look or physical appearance that you have. Okay, so basically, if your mom is dark skinned, okay, so I'm going to say your mom is dark skinned, so it means that this chromosome, it is carrying dark skin, it is carrying the genes for dark skin. Okay, and then your dad is light skinned. Okay, let's just say your dad is light skinned. Your dad is light skinned. Let's just say also your mom has got a brown hair. Your mom has got brown hair, but your dad has got black hair. So your dad has got black hair. So when these exchange genetic material, guys, these characteristics, they are actually mixing up with each other, or they are exchanging. So when they cross over, the dark skin of the mother, it can actually go to the chromosome of the father, and then the black hair of the father, it might actually go to the chromosome of the mother. So basically, we're exchanging these physical characteristics, basically. So now our chromosomes will now have a mix of two different things. So your mom is dark skinned and has got brown hair, your dad is light skinned and has got black hair. But now that these chromosomes have crossed over, we have exchanged those characteristics. You will only find out that now the maternal chromosome, after crossing over, the one from your mother, it now has got black hair and maybe black hair and dark skin. And then now your father's chromosome, maybe it now has got light skin and okay, let's just say maybe it's got light skin and brown hair. So there's been an exchange of characteristics. So this actually results in genetic variation. But now, because we are going to a 10 minutes break, I want you guys to answer me, why do we need to have genetic variation? What is genetic variation actually, from what I've explained? You guys will tell me after 10 minutes.
Hey Lapo, I know that you've been enjoying this wonderful video, and most likely you've been enjoying watching this handsome face in front of you. But sorry ladies, I'm taken. I just here to tell you that Educate is on the road to 100,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. So please click the subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you get notifications whenever I post new videos. I want you guys to pass. Okay, so if you make my dream true, I reach 100k subscribers, I will make your dreams come true. I will even get you to varsity. I will get you with 7 distinctions. Yes.
So guys, when we went to the break, I had given I had given all of you guys a task as a part of the answer of Sam's question to say, why is it even important for these chromosomes to cross over, and why do they even have to exchange this genetic material, for what reason, just be in a realistic sense. And I gave you guys a kind of a good diagram of saying that when they exchange this genetic material, it's like these chromosomes are exchanging different characteristics, your mother's chromosome and your father's chromosome. If it's in your body, it's your mother's and your father's chromosomes. They're actually crossing over and they're exchanging your parents' genetic material so that they can result in genetic variation. So what did you guys find out about that? What's your opinion? Anything that you can say about what I just said? Yes, sir.
Well, sir, genetic variation, I think, is a difference between genes. For an example, Muntu and a short person.
Yes, so there's just a genetic variation. Nice. What did anyone else find, guys? What about others? What did you guys think of this whole genetic variation thing? Any scenario that you can give me? Taking 3, taking 2, taking 1. Anyone else, guys? Yes, Bandisile?
I think it is because we should be genetically different from our parents, so we should have our own genetic material.
Nice. We should be genetically different from our parents. That is one way of saying it. That is one nice way of saying it. We should be genetically different from our parents. Nice. Anyone else, guys, who have something to say before we proceed? Taking 3, taking 2, and taking 1. All right, it's fine. So this is the scenario that I had given you guys. I just want to explain something fun from it so that we can just look over the other phase. This is the only phase that takes time, which is prophase 1. Otherwise, the other phases are simpler to understand. Okay. All right. So I had given you a scenario, guys, whereby you had your mother's chromosome and your father's chromosome that are coding for particular characteristics. And I had said that your mother's chromosome is the red one here, according to this diagram and my convention here. The red chromosome is your mother's chromosome, is your maternal chromosome. It has got brown hair. So your mom has got brown hair. Your mom also has got dark skin. Okay, all of them, they are coded by this red chromosome. And then your dad's chromosome, it is the blue one. All right, your dad has got black hair color, has got light skin. It's got light. Is your dad is light skin? It's like yellow bone babako. Okay, so now when they exchange this genetic material during crossover, we've already said that there's an exchange of genetic material. And I say let's just say, for example, they exchange the skin color, for example. All right, and now after crossing over, your mom's chromosome now has got brown hair and light skin. So you can see that your mom's chromosome had brown hair and dark skin, but now it has got brown hair and light skin. So basically, where is the light skin coming from, guys? Where is the light skin coming from? That is now on your mom's chromosome after crossing over. Where is it coming from, this light skin?
From the father.
From your father, yes. So basically, your father's characteristic has been transferred to your mother, or your father's characteristics has been transferred to your mother's chromosome. And same applies to your father as well. Your father had black hair and light skin. The chromosome of your father had black hair and light skin. It was coding for black hair color and light skin color. But now your father's chromosome, it is now coding for black hair color and dark skin color. So what is the difference here? Is the dark skin. So now where is your dad's chromosome now getting the dark skin all of a sudden? Where is it getting it, guys? The dark skin?
From your mother.
Yes, from the mother's chromosome. So that's the exchange that has happened there. So guys, this is actually during the process of meiosis. We are forming your gametes. So we are forming your sex cells, the ones that will be able to help you make a baby, in simple terms. All right. So if you are a male, this is happening so that you can produce your sperm cells. If you are a female, this is happening so that you can produce your ovum, which is the egg cells. All right, but we use the term ovum. So basically, we want you to have a child that would have a mixture of both the characteristics of your father and your mother. So your child, that is why most of the times your child will look more like your parents. It is because for us to create the sex cell used to create that child, these two chromosomes of your mom and your father had to cross over and mix up their characteristics. Yes, Sam?
Oh, sir, I'm kind of lost. So, crossing over is a body mama noma baba.
No, this is your body. And your body has got a chromosome from your mom and your chromosome from your dad. This is your body. It's in your body cells, in your somatic cell. In your somatic cells, the chromosomes that you have, the 46 chromosomes that you have, is 23 pairs, 23 homologous pairs. One chromosome from your father, one chromosome from your mother. But where are they? They are in your body cells, in yours, not your mother's and your father's. They are in your body cell. So right now you are carrying the chromosomes of your father and the chromosomes of your mother arranged in homologous pairs. So basically, when you need to make a baby, these two chromosomes, the one of your father and the one of your mother, they cross over. Okay, so actually your chromosomes are not your chromosomes. The chromosomes in your body cells, they are from your parents actually. Do you kind of get the sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So the chromosomes that you have, the genes that you have in your body, They are not really yours per se. They are in your body, but they are coming from your parents. When you now need to become a parent yourself, that is when you need to reproduce. When you now need to do the marriage deed and reproduce, what happens? Those two chromosomes, those homologous pairs of chromosomes, they cross over, they overlap. So it means that your father's characteristics will be mixed up with your mother's characteristics in such a way that when you make a baby, your baby will have a mixture. So you are most likely to have a baby that has got brown hair and light skin. But your parents, those characteristics, they were like separated. So this crossing over is introducing that genetic variation, that difference, because variation simply means that we are now having a variety. Okay, so at first your mom had brown hair and she was dark skinned. Your dad had black hair and he was light skinned. But now you only realize that after making a baby, your baby might have brown hair and light skin. So that's now a new thing. That's now another new mixture. And it continues and it continues. Okay. Your baby will also have your chromosomes as well and your wife's chromosome in them if you are a male. So it continues that as the process. So that's the importance of having this crossover thing going on, because we want to introduce genetic variation. Does any one of you guys know your grandparents? Does anyone know their grandparent here? Anyone, guys? Anyone?
Yes.
Please, if you know your grandparents, guys, you should just look at them carefully sometimes. If you are given that opportunity, if they are still there, you can just look at them carefully and observe some characteristics. You'll see that, hi man, I'm having the same nose as my grandmother. It's because in my father's during my father's meiosis, like those chromosomes were crossing over and we're having a mix-up of characteristics. That's how genes are transferred. So those genes are found on chromosomes. Are you guys kind of getting the sense of why this is so important to us as humans?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's the biological importance of crossing over. It is to introduce genetic variation. All right, so prophase 1 is done. This is the most sophisticated phase, of course. Now we're going to the easy one, which is metaphase 1. So during metaphase 1, now crossing over is done, guys. Remember that crossing over is done. So we are done with crossing over. Now what happens? These homologous chromosomes that are done crossing over, they will do what? They will lie on the equator randomly. So guys, remember guys that when we have got a circular shape or a spherical shape, the center of that shape, it is known as the equator. You know that, guys, right? You guys do geography. I know that some of you do geography. So the center of a spherical shape or the central axis of a spherical shape is known as an equator. So here, when we are having our cell, the homologous chromosomes, after they've done the crossing over, they will lie on the equator. So you will see them drawn in such a way that looks like they are lying. You can see that this is your chromosomes. They kind of look like they are lying on the what? On the equator. But they are lying in homologous pairs. Okay, so I want you guys to remember that during prophase 1 in our diagram, you guys were able to identify that the pink chromosome and the purple chromosome, those are homologous. The green chromosome and the white chromosome, those are homologous. You guys identified that yourself. So now, after they cross over, they've got a mixture of characteristics, and you guys are able to see this from this diagram. Do you guys see that this purple chromosome, do you guys see the purple chromosome now here? Do you guys see the purple chromosome is still there, still the same chromosome, this one, the purple chromosome? Do you guys see it?
Yes.
Do you see that it is now having a mixture of a bit of a pink there?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So where's the mixture? Why is it having a bit of a pink?
Because of crossover again, sir.
Yes, so crossover has happened, crossing over has happened. So it has taken some of the characteristics of this pink chromosome. Same applies to the pink chromosome as well. It now has got a bit of a purple color line. So it means that the crossing over has taken place. Now they will lie on the equator in pairs, in homologous pairs. All right. You can see that they're lying here. All of them, they're lying. I'm sure they're no longer standing straight. They're like lying allele on the equator. Even these two ones as well. These two, this green and the white chromosome, they are homologous. They look alike. They have the same shape, same size. They code for the similar characteristics. Now they lie on the equator randomly. When you say that they lie on the equator randomly, it means that there's no specific order at which they lie. So it can happen that this one will be on top, or it can happen that this one can also be on top. So it's just a random, it's a random thing. That's why we say it's known as a random arrangement of homologous chromosomes. So when you want to explain the process of metaphase 1, you must definitely use the keywords that I've used in writing this document. You say that homologous chromosomes lie on the equator randomly. Please guys, if possible, just write this exactly as it is, because if you miss the keyword homologous, that's already giving a wrong depiction, because it's not just any chromosomes that lie on the equator. It is homologous chromosomes that lie on the equator. They lie next to each other, okay, or you can say that they lie on top of each other. Okay, it depends on how you see things from this diagram, but basically the homologous chromosomes, they lie on the equator randomly. The random there, what does it mean? Simply means that there's no specific order at which they are arranged. One can be on top of the other, or the other as well. Doesn't have a specific order. I would say the purple one will be on top, then this one will be at the bottom. No. All right. They just lie randomly. So this process is known as a random arrangement. So random arrangement, if they say explain metaphase 1, or explain the process that happens in metaphase 1. Metaphase 1, by the way, guys, this one, what does it tell us? That our cell is dividing for the first time. Remember, it's that somatic cell that is dividing for the first time. So the homologous chromosomes, they lie on the equator randomly, and this is called a random arrangement. So this random arrangement thing, guys, it also introduces genetic variation. Okay, but we'll see that later on when we now create the two cells. But it's also responsible for genetic variation. So keep it in mind that this random arrangement of homologous chromosomes on the equator, it actually also brings genetic variation. So now we already have two processes that are responsible for genetic variation. It is crossing over, as well as the random arrangement of chromosomes. Okay, so just hold on to the genetic variation for now. Later on, when we even do evolution, you guys will understand why is this random arrangement important. And then the other process that happens during metaphase 1, the spindle fibers, they attach to the centromere of each chromosome. So remember, guys, that the chromatids of a chromosome, two chromatids of a chromosome. So two chromatids of a chromosome, they are attached by a centromere. So the centromere, which is this button-like structure here, this is your centromere. It holds these two chromatids together. So the spindle fibers, remember, guys, we say that we are forming spindle fibers during prophase 1. So these spindle fibers will do what? They will attach on the centromere, or they will kind of pin the centromere. Okay, just imagine them tying on the centromere. Do you guys kind of get the sense of attach in this way? Do you guys kind of see the sense of attach here? They attach, guys. They attach. So these spindle fibers, they are attaching. Okay, they are attaching to the centromere, the one that is connecting the what? The one that is connecting your chromosome. So these spindle fibers, each spindle fiber will try and attach to the centromere. Do you guys all see that?
Yes.
It's pretty simple. There's nothing much complicated about metaphase 1. Once you know how to explain this, you are done. Simply, they are lying on the equator randomly. The homologous chromosomes, by the way. Don't just say chromosomes are lying on the equator. Homologous. Okay. Now, anaphase 1 is the following stage. Remember, guys, that I said that the spindle fibers, they attach to the centromere of each chromosome during metaphase 1. So now when we get to anaphase 1, we say that these spindle fibers will now contract. So the spindle fibers will contract. Guys, when we're saying that something is contracting, it means that it is just becoming more tense, or it is becoming tense. It is like it is pulling something. Okay, it is contracting. Okay, you guys understand contractions in many different ways, right? So remember, guys, that these spindle fibers, they attach themselves to the centromeres of the chromosomes. So if they start contracting, what will happen, guys? What will happen if they start contracting? What do you think will happen? These spindle fibers, they attach to the centromeres and they start contracting, they start stiffening up, they start tightening up. What do you guys think will happen to the chromosomes? Okay, that's the importance. Okay, guys, importance of raising hands so that you guys cannot get into each other's mouth. Please raise your hands. Yes, Tahazo.
So this will pull the chromosomes to the equator, to the poles.
Yes, so basically the spindle fibers, when they're tightening up, they will pull the chromosomes to opposite poles. That is why during anaphase 1, you see these chromosomes kind of being pulled away from each other. So the homologous chromosomes are now being separated. The homologous chromosomes are now being pulled away from one another. Now, these spindle fibers, I'm sure they contracted, these spindle fibers, they contracted and now they are pulling. So these chromosomes, these homologous chromosomes, they are moving to opposite poles. They are separating because they are being pulled, they are being pulled to what? To opposite poles. So as these spindle fibers are contracting, they pull the homologous chromosomes away from one another. Okay, so when you explain that with words, that's simply anaphase 1. There's nothing much more about it. When you explain that in words for you to get proper marks, of course, you say that the spindle fibers contract to pull a homologous chromosomes again here. Don't just say chromosomes, it's a mistake. So to pull the homologous chromosomes to opposite poles. Okay, this is 3 marks. This is usually 3 marks. You're just explaining what happens during anaphase 1. So during anaphase 1, the spindle fibers, they contract or they tighten up. They start pulling. They start pulling the what? They start pulling the chromosomes to opposite poles. We have got a pole on the top where this centriole is. So there's a centriole here. So this is one pole. And then this is another pole on the other centriole. So this is where the chromosomes, the homologous chromosomes, are being pulled to. Do you guys hear what I'm saying?
Yes, so.
Yeah, that's simply it for anaphase 1, nothing much. Other phases, guys, are very simple. That's why I spend the most time on prophase 1, because it is the one that needs deep understanding. Now, telophase 1 is the final stage of the first meiotic division. Now, what will happen? Remember, guys, that a cell, it is covered. The outer covering of a cell, it is known as the cell membrane. So this outer covering of the cell is known as the what? The cell membrane. So now, since these two are being pulled to opposite poles, since these homologous chromosomes are being pulled to opposite poles, so basically your cell membrane will start splitting. Your cell membrane will start doing what? It will start splitting. Your cell membrane will start dividing itself or splitting, pulling away from itself. So this cell will look like something like this. It will have a top part and kind of like a bottom part, because your cell membrane kind of constricts. It kind of constricts and it starts splitting into two cell membranes, because we want to divide the cell and make two cells from one. So as that happens, what happens? The cytoplasm of the cell also splits as well. Okay, remember guys that the cell, it is filled with the fluid known as the cytoplasm. So basically inside the cell, the fluid that is filling this place, it is known as the what? The cytoplasm. So when this cell membrane splits, or when it constricts to form two cells, as this diagram illustrates, you guys can see this diagram, right? It shows that our cell membrane is kind of splitting, going in opposite direction. So the cytoplasm will also be splitted among these two cells. So the splitting of the cytoplasm is known as cytokinesis. So the term cytokinesis simply means that cytoplasm is splitting. The jelly-like structure, the jelly-like fluid that we find inside the cell, it is now going to these two different cells, because we are trying to form two different cells here. That's the whole purpose. And now what happens? They will start developing now these two parts, or these two poles, because remember guys that this is actually coming from two poles that have been separated, because this is one pole on top, this is another pole at the bottom. So these two poles will start forming their new nuclear membranes. So we'll start having nuclear membranes forming. So we have got new nuclear membranes and a new nucleolus also developing around those chromosomes. And then now you can see now that they are now separated. This actually will end up forming two cells. Okay, this will make two cells. One will be this one and another one will be this one. They will actually separate. So we have divided just from one cell, we ended up forming two cells. That's the first meiotic division. Do you guys get the sense? How are you guys hearing? Yes. So each daughter cell now, what's most important, each daughter cell is haploid. So we call these daughter cells because these are the cells that have splitted from one cell, because it was one cell, but now these two, it has splitted into two cells. So we call these daughter cells. So they are daughter cells. Okay. So our daughter cells, they are always haploid. So now I will reintroduce the meaning of haploid. For us humans, haploid means 23 chromosomes. But for general purposes, haploid simply means that we have got what? We have got half the original number of chromosomes. So basically, haploid means that we're having what? Half the original number of chromosomes in a cell. So for us humans, guys, don't forget that. Hey, close your mic. Close your mic. Oh, who is this? Bunolo. Mute your mic. Thank you. Okay, so for us humans, we know that the original somatic cell, the original body cell of a human being consists of 46 chromosomes. So that is the original number of chromosomes. So after meiosis takes place, we know that we are going to have 23 chromosomes. That's half of 46. But haploid simply means that the daughter cell is now having half the original number of chromosomes. When we begin here, guys, we identified how many chromosomes are found in the original cell. So this is our original somatic cell, right? This is our original somatic cell. We say that it is having 4 chromosomes. You guys counted them manually. You found that it is having 4 chromosomes. And we disputed and said that this is not a cell of a human being, because a cell of a human being consists of 46 chromosomes in it. So this is only having 4 chromosomes as the original number. So this somatic cell, it is diploid indeed, because it didn't divide. Diploid simply means that is the original number of chromosomes that we have. We are kind of redefining the terms here. Okay, so the diploid somatic cell here, it had 4 chromosomes at first, but now after dividing into 2 cells, we end up having one cell having 2 chromosomes. Do you guys notice that here we're going to have one cell here, the first cell here that we're going to develop is having 2 chromosomes? Do you guys see that? Do we see it, guys?
Yes.
And the other one is also having 2 chromosomes. So basically we had 4 at first, but now we're having 2. So these are haploid daughter cells because they've got half of the original number of chromosomes. Now we say that these daughter cells, they are what? They are genetically different. Okay, they don't have the same genes, they don't have the same gene combination because crossing over took place, so they cannot be the same. I mean, if you look at this one carefully, guys, one of these daughter cells, it has got this purple chromosome. If you look carefully, you can see that one of them, it has got this purple chromosome. Okay, it has got this purple chromosome that has got a little bit of pink. The other cell, it has got this pink chromosome that has got a little bit of purple. Okay, so they are already genetically different. They don't consist of the same genetic material. So in easier terms or in simpler terms, what we can say here, we can just say that the two cells that we form at the end, they are haploid. And haploid, what does it mean? It means that they've got half of the original number of chromosomes. Are you guys getting each other here? Are you guys getting each other, or people are sleeping now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, don't sleep, guys. You're too many in the room. I can see people are there, but people look like they're quiet. But we have done the first meiotic division, because the first meiotic division is all about this, guys. That's the first meiotic division. I'm sure we explained it last time that briefly, the first meiotic division, you start with a diploid somatic cell, and then after the first meiotic division, it divides into two genetically different cells that are haploid. But here we used 46 chromosomes because we are referring to human beings. Okay, but now in these problems that you're going to be given in exams and in tests, they won't give you 46 chromosomes. I mean, like, you cannot really draw 46 chromosomes one by one. So they are likely to just give you a cell that has got any other number of chromosomes. But you should know that that is not a cell of a human being, because a human being cell's diploid number must be 46. Guys, may I please ask one question? These two daughter cells that we have formed, can we say that they're known as gametes? That's my question.
No.
Why not Mpo? Okay, why not?
Isn't because
Yes.
the gamete isn't
Yes.
because the gametes are the ones that are basically a result of meiosis too.
Yes, they are the result of meiosis too. So for you to be able to form gamete, your cell must divide 2 times. Here we just did the first meiotic division. That is why when we wrote the phases, we were writing a 1 next to it. So this 1 was just telling us that is the first meiotic division. Okay, it is the cell is dividing for the first time. Now the cell is divided. It has formed 2 genetically different daughter cells. These 2 genetically different daughter cells, they are not yet gametes, guys, because basically for it to form gametes, I explained this in the previous session, was for a cell to end up forming gametes, the somatic cell must divide 2 times before it can form the gamete. So now we need to go to another second division, another second meiotic division, which will result in the formation of gamete. This one will be the simplest one of all because, guys, remember, guys, the phases will be the same. The only difference is that on the phases, we're going to write prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2, telophase 2 as well, because now we are dividing the cell for the second time. Now, what are we dividing here, guys? We are dividing these 2 genetically different haploid daughter cells. So we are going to divide them again so that we can form 4 in total, because that is our model that we had at first. We divide the first one into 2, and then these 2 will divide again and form 4 haploid gametes at the end of the day. So now that is what we need to do at the second division of meiosis, the second meiotic division. So we're still going to start with prophase 2, but now my diagrams will now have 2 cells because remember guys that we are dividing these 2 cells into 4 cells again. Okay, so these are the 2 daughter cells that we formed during the first meiotic division. Now let's divide them again so that we can be able to form our gametes, which is the sex cells that are required for you to make babies. All right, prophase 1, prophase 2 has got the same events as prophase 1, so we're not going to write them again. The same thing will happen guys. The nuclear membrane will disappear. Remember guys, prophase 1 we say that the nuclear membrane disappears and the nucleolus spindle fibers start forming. Whatever that we mentioned will just repeat itself again. Nothing will change. Besides that, crossing over will not take place during prophase 1. Okay, so here the difference here is that during prophase 1, let's just look at the diagram for prophase 1, which is this one. This first diagram is our prophase 1. Okay, in our prophase 1, you see that we don't really have homologous pairs of chromosomes anymore. Do you guys notice that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we don't have any homologous pairs anymore because these are not, they don't look alike, guys. If you look carefully, if I zoom it even more here, this green chromosome, it doesn't look alike as the purple pink chromosome. Okay, even on the second cell, this pink purple chromosome doesn't look like the white chromosome. So basically, we don't have any homologous chromosomes here. So you should just know that we don't have anything known as a bivalent as well in prophase 2, because prophase 2 doesn't have any homologous chromosomes. So that's one thing that you can add there and say that here we don't have any homologous chromosomes, or you can say that your chromosomes are not arranged in homologous pairs. So here we don't have any homologous chromosomes, or we don't have any homologous pairs of chromosomes. That's your prophase 1. Otherwise, the same thing will apply, guys. Spindle fibers will start to form. The centrosome will split into 2 centrioles. You guys can just take that from prophase 1. I don't have to go through it again. What's most important is metaphase 2 and anaphase 2. I want you to pay very careful attention to it. Metaphase 2, single chromosome lie on the equator randomly. Hey guys, during metaphase 1, we had homologous chromosomes that were lying together on the equator. Because if we go back to our metaphase 1 slide, we say that we're having homologous chromosomes lying on the equator randomly. They were homologous. Remember guys that we had the chromosomes that had finished crossing over, and then they were homologous, one from your mother, one from your father, and they were lying randomly on the equator. But now during metaphase 2, we say that we don't have any homologous chromosome anymore. So we're going to say that these are single chromosomes. So single chromosomes lie on the equator randomly. They are still lying randomly, but they are now single chromosomes. So there's no chromosome that will lie with a partner, because those chromosomes, they don't look alike anymore. Let's take it in a diagrammatic way and look at this diagram 2, because diagram 2 of these 2 cells, it is showing us the what? It is showing us the metaphase. Do you see guys that this green chromosome, let me just zoom it in so that you can make a bit of annotations here. So if you look carefully guys, this green chromosome, this green chromosome that I'm circling, it is lying alone, it is single. Okay, this other one, this purple pink chromosome, it is also lying alone singly. It is single as well. There's none that are lying in pairs here, because we don't have any pairs anymore. Look at even the second cell, this white chromosome, it is lying alone singly. So basically they lie singly. Okay, we don't have any homologous pairs. Even this one, it is lying on its own on the equator. So that's what we mean when we say that single chromosomes, they lie on the equator, but they still lie randomly. They don't have any specific order, but they are single chromosomes. You don't use the term homologous chromosomes anymore because we don't have them. So it's very important guys for you to say single chromosomes, because if I ask you describe metaphase 2, you cannot tell me about homologous chromosomes. You cannot explain it the same way as you did on metaphase 1. Because during metaphase 1, you say that homologous chromosomes lie on the equator. randomly. But now you change, you say that single chromosomes, or you can say individual chromosomes, lie on the equator randomly, because there is no homologous chromosomes anymore. Is that clear, guys?
Yes.
Be very careful, guys, when it comes to answering questions. There are certain keywords that you need to highlight to show that you understand the difference between these two phases. Yes, it is metaphase. Similar events are happening, but the specification here is that they are lying singly. But the spindle fibers will still attach to the centromere in the same way. Okay, so the spindle fibers, just as they did during metaphase 2, they will attach to your centromere. So the spindle fibers will just attach to the centromeres of these single chromosomes. Okay, and then anaphase 2. During anaphase 1, guys, we said that the spindle fibers, they contract and they start pulling the chromosomes away from each other, the homologous chromosomes away from each other. If I can just rewind you guys to that, I told you guys that during anaphase 1, these two homologous chromosomes, they are separated because these two spindle fibers, they are pulling them to opposite poles. But now when it comes to anaphase 2, during anaphase 2, centromere splits. The sister chromatids are pulled to opposite poles by the spindle fibers. So now we're going to another 10 minutes break, unfortunately. I want you guys to come and explain to me, why am I saying that sister chromatids are being pulled to opposite poles? Why don't I say that homologous chromosomes are being pulled to opposite poles? You will answer me after 10 minutes, because I said just during, understand the question, guys, before we go. Anaphase 2, the centromere will split. The sister chromatids are pulled to opposite poles by the spindle fibers. Why am I saying that the sister chromatids are being pulled to opposite poles? Kind of internalize that idea, then we'll come back after 10 minutes.
Hey Lapo, I know that you've been enjoying this wonderful video and most likely you've been enjoying watching this handsome face in front of you, but sorry ladies, I'm taken. I just here to tell you that Educate is on the road to 100,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. So please click the subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you get notifications whenever I post new videos. I want you guys to pass. Okay, so if you make my dream true, I reach 100k subscribers, I will make your dreams come true. I will even get you to varsity. I will get you with 7 distinctions. Yes.
We say that you guys must wonder. You guys must wonder, because I like someone who's curious, guys. Being curious gets you a lot far in life rather than just passive learning and listening to what I say. Okay, it's not really about what I say, it's about what you can get and understand from this whole thing. So now I say that during anaphase, during anaphase 1, remember guys, during anaphase 1, when we explained, we said that the spindle fibers, they are contracting so that they can pull homologous chromosomes away from one another to opposite poles. So some of the chromosomes are going to upwards here to this up pole, some of them are going to this lower pole here, downwards. So basically, that's what happens during anaphase 1. Now we want to take this to anaphase 2, where we don't have any homologous chromosomes, because we say that during anaphase 2, during the second meiotic division, we only have got single chromosomes or individual chromosomes. Now my question is, what is actually being separated here, guys? Because at first we were separating homologous chromosomes. During anaphase 2, what's happening actually? Just try to explain anaphase 2 in your own words. Anyone, guys, just what you understand based on the statement provided. Raise your hands, guys. Any opinion, guys. You must answer. That's the bottom point. We won't move until one of you says something. Kind of try to explain anaphase 2 in your own words, actually. Raise your hands, guys. Raise your hands. So there's no one who even wondered anything here for the entire 10 minutes. Yes, Sam? Let's hear from Sam. Okay, Sam is quiet. Let's hear from Vuvu.
We are separated the chromatids.
We separated the chromatids to opposite poles. Nice. Bandisile, what did you want to say?
In metaphase 2, we had single chromosome. They are now separated in opposite direction.
Awesome. Just wanted just a bit of an opinion. Yes, Sam, I see now you are unmute. You can talk.
Well, sir, I was going to say each chromosome splits into identical pieces.
What are those pieces known as? That's what I want to know.
Chromatids, sir.
Chromatids, cool. Yeah, I just wanted you guys to get a grasp. During anaphase 2, we are not separating homologous chromosomes here, guys, because at the metaphase 1, we had single chromosomes that are lying on the equator. So we had a scenario whereby we had our cell, right, as a spherical shape, of course, and it was having an equator here. This is our equator in 3 dimensions, of course. And then you had like single chromosomes, of course. So this is a single chromosome. Now we are pulling them. So we are now pulling them. During anaphase 1, we say that now the spindle fibers are now contracting. As we pull, because here we're having like 2 spindle fibers attached to the same centromere. This centromere will break apart, guys, because it is being pulled. Okay, here we've got our centrioles. So the centromere in this case, it will break apart, it will split. So the main keyword that you need for anaphase 2 is that the centromere splits. The centromere, remember guys, that it is the one that is connecting, the 2 chromatids to make a chromosome. Because remember guys, the chromosome, something like this, it has got a centromere and it has got what? It also has got 2 chromatids that are connected by a centromere. So here at this point, our centromere will split, or our centromere will break apart. So that's the first thing. And when it breaks apart, it means that what we are actually going to separate, it is these chromatids. So one of the chromatids will go to the upper pole, the other one will go to the lower pole. Okay, so one will go to the upper pole, the other one to the lower pole. So basically, we are separating chromatids, not chromosomes. So we are separating chromatids and not the whole chromosome. Okay, so if you guys get a grasp of that, and if you guys understand that, let us now see what do we refer to these chromatids as. Okay, if we look at the diagram, the formal diagram that I have here, you guys can see properly what's happening, guys. These are 2 chromatids that are being pulled to opposite poles. I think this is clear, isn't it? In both cells. Is there anything confusing? It's very clear, guys. Yeah, it shows, it's very clear. It shows what 2 chromatids are being pulled to opposite poles. The centromere broke for that to happen. Okay, so now this is where you need to listen very carefully. Guys, remember, this is not maths, this is life sciences. At some point, Sam asked me last time, at first we had 46 chromosomes in a diploid somatic cell of a human being, and they splitted during the first meiotic division to make 23 chromosomes in each cell. And Sam said it makes sense 46 splitted into 23. It makes very much sense. But now when these 2 cells that have got 23 chromosomes split again, they still form 4 cells with 23 chromosomes in each. And now Sam was like, nah man, the maths is not mathsing there. How can 23 chromosomes, like how can a cell having 23 chromosomes split into another 2 cells having 23 chromosomes? Like guys, can the maths actually make sense there? Does it make sense, guys, the maths there to?
No, sir.
It can never happen, guys.
No.
Yeah, it can never happen if we are talking about the same chromosome. Okay, if we are talking about the same chromosome, it's like we're having 23 humans in a hall and we want to separate them and move them to 2 different rooms. Those 23 humans, okay, let's just say we're having 24 humans. So for us to separate them, we need 12 to go in one room, 12 to go in another room. Okay, if we're talking about humans. But why are chromosomes being splitted in such a way that 23 chromosomes, a cell with 23 chromosomes, will split to make 2 more cells with 23 chromosomes? So it means that we are not talking about the same chromosome here. That's when you need to learn that we have got different types of chromosomes actually. Something that you learned in grade 10, probably you forgot, but I don't know. So chromatids, guys, at this point, the chromatids that we have separated, and during anaphase 2, we say that we have separated the chromatids, right? So these 2 chromatids are being pulled to opposite poles. The sister chromatids, remember when you say that they are sister chromatids, it means that they are coming from the same chromosomes or they were connected by a centromere, but now we are splitting it, we are separating them from one another. Okay, so at this point, those chromatids, they are actually known as unreplicated chromosomes. So actually, guys, a chromatid is a chromosome. Aye, but now you'll be like, what's happening then? How come? Like, a chromatid is a chromosome. How come? Let me remind you what you have learned in grade 10 and you didn't give attention to. So guys, we've got 2 types of chromosomes. We have got unreplicated chromosomes. We have got replicated chromosomes. What is the difference, the structural difference between these 2? The unreplicated chromosome, it is just a single chromosome. You can see here it's written unreplicated chromosome. Okay, if you look at diagram 1, this chromosome that looks single, you actually call it a chromatid, yes, but it is actually known as what? As an unreplicated chromosome. So when we're talking about a chromatid, you can also refer to it as what? You can also refer to it as an unreplicated chromosome. So why do we say that it is unreplicated? This is actually the chromosome before DNA replication takes place. So basically, guys, before DNA replication takes place during the interphase, a chromosome just looks like this. We just have a chromatid. But most of the times we say it's a chromatid. We don't usually use the term unreplicated chromosome. We only use this term unreplicated chromosome when we reach anaphase 2. Okay, if you guys want to do medicine or biochemistry later on, you guys will later find out why is that. But for simplicity's sake, a chromatid is actually an unreplicated chromosome. This means that before DNA replication takes place, a chromosome is just a single chromatid. We say that is the chromosome before DNA replication. But after DNA replication, that is when we are going to have 2 chromosomes, two chromatids. So our chromosome now will be made up of 2 chromatids after DNA replication. What do you guys notice about these diagrams? What do you guys kind of notice? Just try to make an observation before we explain this further. What do you guys notice? Well, okay, what can you notice from these diagrams? Anyone noticing something?
They have the same formula.
Both have got the same what?
They have a same formula.
Both of them both of them have got a centromere, of course. Yes, so this is our chromatid or our unreplicated chromosome. It has got a centromere, but it is just a single. We say it's known as a single-stranded chromosome. You can say it's known as a single-stranded chromosome, but that is just an advanced term. Use the term unreplicated chromosome. So during DNA replication, what actually happens? This single chromosome, this unreplicated chromosome, it makes a copy of itself. That is why here you are now having 2 of them, guys. It makes a copy of itself, or it duplicates itself. Now you are having 2 of them, and they are joined by this centromere. So this is just explaining how did we come to have this normal chromosome that we usually just say a chromosome. But now I'm now giving you more specific details to say, what you actually call a chromatid is actually an unreplicated chromosome. This is how a chromosome looks like before DNA replication. So during interphase, DNA replication takes place. I still remember telling you guys that during interphase, DNA replication takes place. So in other ways, during interphase, when DNA replication is taking place, this single chromosome, this unreplicated chromosome, it makes a copy of itself because it's made up of DNA, Yangish. So when we are saying that DNA replication is taking place, it simply means that this single chromatid, you can call it a chromatid or you can call it an unreplicated chromosome, still the same thing. All right. So this single chromosome, this single unreplicated chromosome, it replicates itself, it makes a copy of itself and makes two of them. That is why we have this normal chromosome that we're used to. But both of them are chromosomes. Quite a big concept. But you learned this in grade 10, guys. So you guys now know that a chromatid can also be referred to as an unreplicated chromosome. But most of the times, when we're talking about a chromosome before anaphase 2, we are talking about the normal chromosome, the one with two chromatids. These are the normal chromosomes that you guys are used to, but they are known as replicated chromosomes. So guys, please get used to those terms. When they ask in multiple questions, they will definitely mention the term replicated. So a replicated chromosome, it is the chromosome that you know that is having two chromatids. And then unreplicated chromosome, it is actually what? A chromatid. It is known as an unreplicated chromosome. Does this kind of make sense, guys? Yeah. Yeah, it's quite difficult, Connor, to adjust from chromatid to just saying it's a chromosome. But at this point, you need to recognize it as a chromosome. Don't call it a chromatid anymore. Once you reach anaphase 2, start calling it an unreplicated chromosome. So basically, these two chromatids that were being pulled, actually we say that the centromere splits the sister chromatids to opposite poles. So these sister chromatids, we're not gonna call them chromatids anymore. We're gonna call them unreplicated chromosomes. Are you guys hearing each other? What?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So at this point, cytokinesis will take place again, guys. The same thing is happening in telophase 2. Is the final phase of meiosis 2. Basically, cytokinesis simply means that your cytoplasm, it is going to split again. And now you can see, guys, that these two cells are now splitting to form 4 in total. Actually here, we had 2 cells, right, that are dividing again. Now they're going to do what? They're going to split again. So your cell membrane will constrict about the equator. So they will constrict. And then when they constrict, they will split again. So it means that now we're going to have 4 cells in total. So on top, we're going to have 1 cell and another one here, then another one here, then another one here. So the second meiotic division is complete. That's the second meiotic division. Okay, so now the result here, these 4 cells that we have at the end, let us count how many chromosomes they had. Let's count, guys. Now, this first cell, cell number 1, the one labeled 1, do you see, guys, that here we have got 2 chromosomes? Can you say that you've got 2 unreplicated chromosomes? Do you guys allow me to say that?
Yes.
Yes, so cell number 1 has got what? It's got 2 unreplicated chromosomes. 2, but we just say it's 2 chromosomes at the end of the day. So we've got 2 chromosomes, but it's 2 unreplicated chromosomes. Don't call them chromatids anymore. Cell number 2, it is still the same thing, guys. Cell number 2, it is now having 2 unreplicated chromosomes. So I'm just going to say it has got 2 chromosomes without specifying. Even cell number 3 is having 2 of them. Even cell number 4 is having 2 of them. Do you guys see where the maths has sketched here? Remember, guys, just to go back for the last time, we started with a cell, the body cell, the somatic cell that we had a diploid number of 4 chromosomes. So the original number of chromosomes was 4 in total. And we say that meiosis is kind of a reduction division, whereby the number of chromosomes have to be halved. So they must move from a diploid to a haploid state. So from diploid to haploid, it simply means that we are halving the number of chromosomes. So it means that since we began with 4 chromosomes in the original cell, these 4 chromosomes are supposed, or the final cells that we must have, each of them must have what? It must have 2 chromosomes in it. That makes it to be haploid. Okay. Similarly here, even in a human cell, it's a similar concept, guys. In a human cell, we say that we've got 46 chromosomes in the original diploid somatic cell. Then it's splitted into 23. The first meiotic division was pretty clear. But the second meiotic division, these 23, guys, these are 23 unreplicated chromosomes. All right. They are not the normal chromosomes that you guys are used to. They are the chromatids actually, but we refer to them as what? As unreplicated chromosomes. That is why the maths here, it was not hlanganing. Maths being a hlanganana, guys, the maths was not mathsing at this point, because you cannot say 23 will split into 23 again. No. Okay, but now these chromatids, we don't call them chromatids anymore. We call them unreplicated chromosomes. But most of the times, you're just going to say that they are chromosomes at the end of the day. So that's how we explain a diploid somatic cell in a human being having 46 chromosomes. At the end of the day, it will divide to form a haploid gamete having 23 chromosomes. That's how I introduced meiosis to you guys when I say that meiosis is just when a diploid body cell having 46 chromosomes divides through meiosis to form haploid gametes, which are the sex cells having 23 chromosomes in it. So you guys now know that these 23 chromosomes are unreplicated. Do you guys get me when I'm talking here?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So basically, that's how it happens. But you guys should just know that we start with one diploid somatic cell, and then at the end of the day, we must produce 4 haploid gametes. 4 haploid gametes. The number of chromosomes in the gametes must be half the original number of chromosomes in the original body cell, the somatic cell. So we started with 46 chromosomes in the diploid somatic cell, in the body cells of a human being, and at the end of the day, we ended up with haploid gametes. That is why your sperm cells, the sperm cells consist of 23 chromosomes. Aren't you guys, when I introduced it, I told you guys that the 46 chromosomes that you have, 23 from your father's sperm cell, 23 from your mother's ovum. Okay, so this is how the 23 is made up of. This is how you produce sex cells. This is how you end up having a sperm cell. So each and every male who is in their puberty stage, they have got sperm cells, and those sperm cells have got 23 chromosomes in them. Each and every female in the puberty stage, they've got ova. Ova, that's the plural for ovum. Okay, or you can say they've got egg cells, but we use the term ova, ovum, if it is one. Okay, and each ovum has got 23 unreplicated chromosomes. That's how we are able to end up having 4 haploid, genetically different daughter cells, and we give them a name as gametes. So here we have definitely formed the gametes because we have divided 2 times. So this is your telophase 2, which serves as the final stage. So do you guys see the maths part of the chromosome splitting?
Yes, even though it's weird, but yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's weird to see a chromatid will end up being said is a chromosome. But basically, if this chromatid goes through DNA replication again, it will form a chromosome again. So that's why we just call it a chromosome. So if this cell goes through interphase again, but they don't divide per se because these are gametes. The gametes don't divide. Like once we create the gametes, we're done. But basically, we have haploid. Please, guys, get used to using the proper terms. Diploid simply means that is the original number of chromosomes in the body cell, in the somatic cell. Then haploid, it means that this is the half of the original number which is found in a gamete. And remember, guys, the first meiotic division does not produce gametes. So after the first meiotic division, these two genetically different daughter cells, they are not gametes yet. Only then after division will we have gametes. So guys, can I hear from you? Are these cells genetically different or are they genetically identical? These cells, these gametes at the end.
They are genetically different.
Yes, they're genetically different, guys. You can just see from the diagrams that these unreplicated chromosomes, they are different from one another. This combination is like green and purple, but this other combination is like green and purple and pink, so it's like different. This is green and pink, and then this is green and pink purple. These are different chromosomes, so they consist of different genetic material. These are all going to be your gametes. So when you make a baby at some point, you don't know which one will fertilize. You don't know which sperm cell will fertilize. Okay, so maybe the sperm cell having the black skin color will fertilize the ovule. Maybe the sperm cell having the characteristics of brown skin color will fertilize the ovule. Okay, you'll never know which one, but basically this is how we end up having that genetic variation. So did you guys understand the process of meiosis?
Yes, I understand.
Yes. So this is very important, guys. If I am telling you again, because you are grade 12s, most of you, if you want to do health sciences, if you want to do nursing, if you want to do whatever health science course, usually the health sciences course, they have a lot to do with life sciences. Make sure that you pass this life sciences with a distinction, please. The competition is too high there for medicine students as well. The doctors, please make sure that you pass this with a distinction, and maths and physics as well. So you guys will do the homeworks here. Exercise 1, 15 marks. Exercise 2, 10 marks. Exercise 3, 14 marks. Exercise 4, 12 marks. That's all. So you've got 4 exercises, guys, to take your time and do them. Our next session is will be on Tuesday. We'll be concluding everything about meiosis, because meiosis shouldn't take time. It's only 3 sessions for meiosis, so that we can do human reproduction and finish with term 1 for life sciences. So you guys have got 4 activities, and how many days do you have? Saturday, Sunday, Monday. 3 days to do the activities. There are no excuses that I expect from any of you. You do the activities, you send to my inbox. There are some questions that are related to genetics and another topics, but you guys can just skip them. I will tell you which questions to skip, and I will send this document into the group as well. With that said, may we please close with a prayer. Who's going to give us a prayer so that we can sleep?
May everyone close their eyes.
Yes.
Lord God, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to give us. You gave us to learn, Lord. Thank you for your blessings, and thank you for everything. Help us to cross any information that we learn